What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel, guys. We're back with a new video, something different, and really a good question at that. What if you were stranded on the world's most remote island? Hey, for me, I wouldn't want to be stranded anywhere, but there was a movie, I forgot what it was called, but there was a movie, a guy. And matter of fact, it was the guy that played the genie of Aladdin. I forgot his name. Y'all know who he is. Rest in peace. I believe he passed away. But there was a movie where he was stranded on an island and all this stuff, and he had to make friends. He created friends that were like a mob and all these different objects type things and stuff like that. But I forgot what it's called, man. I really like the movie, but we finna check this out. And y'all let me know what you think, especially as we go through this video. What would you do if you were stranded on a remote island, But hit that subscribe button, send down those recommendations, and let's jump into
This video is made possible by Micro Center. Get a free 128GB flash drive and a 128GB micro SD card when you follow the link down in the description below. If you're watching this video and you live in a city, it might be hard to grasp how utterly remote the world's most remote island actually is. Let me put it this way. There are nearly 8 billion people living their lives in our world today, which is a really, really huge number. That's more than triple the number of people who existed as recently as 1950. While by and large, most of us today are congregating ever more into the same few places. Today, over 56% of all 8 billion of us live within cities, and in less than 30 years from now, by 2050, that share is estimated to increase up to 68% of us.
Dang.
And those are just the worldwide figures. In developed countries like the United States, the concentration of people living within cities is even higher at about 83%. While in the Netherlands, it's even higher still at an overwhelming 92% of the population. Largely because of that, despite there being nearly 8 billion of us worldwide, a lot of the world is still pretty empty. This is the United States, and these spots colored in green are the more than 4 million census block areas where not a single person currently lives. Nobody watching or commenting on this video lives within any of these green locations, and every other large country in the world has a pretty similar trend.
And this is from 2014. I'm pretty sure that by now, it gotta be somebody living in these places, Because I know where I live, there is like 2 or 3 new towns, small towns that popped up out of nowhere. Wow, it was a lot of land. So people start building and stuff like that, start creating new communities and stuff. So I don't know. It might not be too much green.
Any of these
now.
green locations, and every other large country in the world has a pretty similar trend. This is Canada, which is overwhelmingly empty of people.
Wow.
This is Brazil, which is also pretty overwhelmingly empty of people, while this is the United Kingdom, which also has a lot of areas in Scotland and Wales where there just aren't any people currently living. There are a lot of empty and desolate places across the world that would be horrible to find yourself stranded and lost in, far away from any civilization or people who could offer any help. But the absolute worst place on the entire planet to be stranded on, without a doubt, is in Norway. Well, not this part of Norway, but this part, this tiny little island far away from all of us in the South Atlantic, called Bouvet. To say that Bouvet is remote would be a vast understatement. First of all, nobody lives here. It's completely uninhabited. Second of all, it's quite literally the most isolated piece of land anywhere on Earth, meaning that it is the piece of land that is the furthest away from any other.
That's crazy, because I've never seen that little small dot on the map, and maybe I missed on a video. I don't remember them talking about Bouvet
on Earth, meaning that it is the piece of land that is the furthest away from any other land. The nearest other landmass is 1,700 kilometers away to the south, and that's just Antarctica. Besides that, it's 2,250 kilometers away across ocean from the nearest actually inhabited landmass, and that's just the tiny speck that is Tristan da Cunha Island. Population only 250. Besides that, it's 2,600 kilometers away to the nearest inhabited continent in southern Africa. This means that if you draw out a circle with a radius of 2,000 kilometers with Bouvet Island right in the center, and you were located on Bouvet, you would be the only human within that entire circle. And the circle would have an area roughly equivalent to the entire European continent. Imagine being the only human in Europe. And that's the level of isolation.
I know one thing, it will be definitely boring just being me. No stores, no nothing. Like, man, that would be some hard survival right
Imagine being the only human in Europe. And that's the level of isolation that you'd feel here alone. And this is all besides the point that Bouvet itself is incredibly tiny. Only 49 square kilometers in total area, which is only about half the size of Disney World in Orlando. But unlike Disney World, 93% of Bouvet is covered by a thick icy glacier, and temperatures only average throughout the entire year at about -1 Celsius. It is a desolate, empty, isolated, and frozen wasteland in the middle of nowhere that for some reason belongs to Norway. The island is so remote.
I'm sure this answers your question. You know, if you was stranded, would you want to be stranded on that? Nah, what if you were? It's already cold too. Like, I would have seen if it was like, you know, a fair temperature. But nah, freezing cold, stranded. I don't think I would make it, man. I don't think
Nowhere
I would make it, guys.
that for some reason belongs to Norway. The island is so remote that no human eyes ever even witnessed it until 1739, when a French ship sailed by it on an expedition but didn't land. Nearly a century went by until another group of humans even saw it again in 1808. This time a British ship, but once again they failed to actually land. The first 100% confirmed landing on the island took place in 1825, when a group of British sailors landed and claimed it for Great Britain. But then, after they left, nobody came back to visit the island again for another 68 years.
Wow.
Throughout the entire 19th century, there may have only been 4 ships who ever visited the island, and only one of those actually landed. The Norwegians finally arrived to the uninhabited and almost unvisited island only in 1927, when they built a hut, raised a flag, and claimed it for themselves, as the British had once done a century earlier. Back then in 1927, the British initially disputed Norway's claim to the island, but after giving it a second thought, they decided that Bouvet was A, tiny, B, didn't have any harbors for ships and didn't really have any resources, and C, was in the literal middle of nowhere that wasn't nearby to anything of even the most remote strategic importance. And so, the British relented and allowed the Norwegians to claim it, and today, Bouvet Island is Norway's only real overseas dependency, despite being located nearly 13.
That means there's nothing still on it. Like, what is it? What do you have it for if it's nothing there?
1,000 kilometers away from the capital of Oslo. And as you'd expect, there isn't really anything.
This is pretty much Antarctica, ain't it? This is closer to Antarctica.
Kilometers away from the capital of Oslo. And as you'd expect, there isn't really anything that ever goes on here. Since the island is so far out of the way from any inhabited location on Earth, ships sailing over the seas and airplanes flying above rarely, if ever, pass by it. The area is so absurdly remote and far away from any human civilization that you could probably even detonate a nuclear bomb here and nobody would ever hear or know about it. I say that because it probably literally already happened. Back in 1979, an American satellite flying above the area detected a double flash of light in the ocean nearby to Bouvet Island, the classic signature of a nuclear explosion. But nobody in the decades since has ever claimed any responsibility for the detonation. To this date, the information regarding the incident is classified by the United States government, but most researchers believe that the detonation was a secret, undeclared nuclear weapons test conducted jointly by apartheid-era South Africa and Israel, although both governments continue to deny any and all involvement to this day. But even just getting to Bouvet Island in the first place is a massive challenge. Since the island and the waters around it are protected as a nature reserve by the Norwegian government, you need strict permission to ever be allowed to visit, and those permissions are rarely ever granted. But let's pretend for a moment that right now, as you're
I mean, who would just want to go to Bouvet Island? There's nothing there. It looked like it's super cold. I mean, me personally, I probably wouldn't.
watching this video, you were somehow teleported directly to the island as you currently are and just told good luck. How would you find your way to escape?
Oh, no.
What would you do to survive, and would it all even be possible? Well, there obviously isn't any cell service or Wi-Fi to be heard of on Bouvet, so your phone's gonna be pointless. With the average temperature being -1 degree Celsius, the first thing you're going to need to do is obviously find warmth. But there aren't any trees and there isn't any wood to build any fires with. And you probably don't even have anything to start a fire with in the first place, so that's going to be difficult.
Right.
Maybe you think your best option would be to attempt to build a raft or a boat and simply row your way out towards civilization. There are unfortunately multiple problems with this idea. First of all, as mentioned previously, 93% of the island is covered by a glacier, and beneath that glacier is an active volcano. The sides of the island are therefore almost entirely sheer, vertical, icy cliffs, and the island doesn't really have any beaches for you to launch a ship or a raft off of. So even if you do somehow acquire a raft, what are you gonna do? Toss it off a cliff and
You can't do nothing. You get stranded there, you just stuck. You can't do nothing there. Yeah,
then jump off the cliff yourself into the freezing Antarctic waters? Further, how are you going to build a raft? Like I said, there aren't any trees on Bouvet Island, and that means there isn't any wood. By some miracle, if you manage to find a perfectly seaworthy raft that's somehow washed up on the shoreline, where are you going to even row to? Tristan da Cunha is a tiny island, and the odds of you successfully hitting it are just slim to none. So, if you decide on rowing in the direction of South Africa instead, and if you could somehow manage to row even at an Olympic level, it would still take you more than 6 consecutive days of non-stop, continuous rowing without any breaks whatsoever to get there.
And then I just did a video about the deepest parts of the ocean. So I'm like, you don't know what's in that water. I don't know what might come up and try to snatch me up type thing, especially on this little canoe that they are on. Like, you just never know. That water look cold, like kind of Titanic was.
So, in all reality, it would really take you several weeks, if not even months, to actually row to South Africa. And that's just assuming you even make it there without dying of exhaustion, thirst, hunger, or from the elements first. Okay, so escaping on your own from Bouvet is most likely a bad idea and probably not even possible. So what about just bunkering down on the island, surviving, and hopefully just waiting it out until someone else shows up? Well, this strategy probably isn't that much better. The island's harsh, freezing climate has seriously limited the amount of food that's available. The only non-animal life to speak of are restricted to fungi and moss, and they mostly grow in the few and far between snow-free areas of the island. The problem here is that most of the snow-free areas, and therefore most of the fungi and moss, are located on land that is so steep they're subjected frequently to the threats of avalanches. So, good luck not getting crushed or buried. On the flip side though, animal life itself is rather plentiful. The island is one of the most important breeding colonies for several species of penguin, and there are often tens of thousands of them present on the island at a time. There are hundreds of thousands of other bird species present, and tens of thousands of seals as well. So if you can master hunting and are okay with eating birds or seals, you can have plenty of food to survive off of.
That's gonna be a battle. I ain't gonna have nothing to kill them with or nothing. I'm gonna have to throw these hands and they might whoop me.
The biggest problem for you though is that there's just no telling how long you'll need to survive doing all of this for. Ships and planes rarely ever travel by, and the odds of them seeing you when they do are slim to none. And the island is pretty often covered in fog, so when a plane flies overhead, they're probably just not ever going to see you. Your best bet would be to hold off and wait for an actual intentional trip to the island itself. But those are carried out very rarely. Weirdly enough, there are actually 3 planned expeditions to Bouvet Island led by the Norwegian government in each of the next 3 years in 2022, 23, and 24, but that's generally not the case. Usually, there could be many, many years in between expeditions where no human is coming to visit at all. Meaning that depending on when you become stranded, the next people coming to visit could be up to a year or many years away from visiting.
Wow.
In fact, so few people have ever visited the island that it's estimated only about 100 people have ever actually been there throughout
I didn't think nobody been there. Like, you just, I mean, other than the ones that discovered it earlier on in time in the 1800s, but 2000,
Only
somebody
about
been there?
100 people have ever actually been there throughout all of human history. To put that into perspective, there are more than 5 times as many humans who have been to space than have been to Bouvet Island. It's an insanely difficult place to get to, and if you ever reach it, you can join one of the most exclusive groups of people who have ever existed. As an example, this guy named Charles Bailey visited the island back in 2003 and is widely acclaimed to be the world's most well-traveled person. In order to reach Bouvet, it took him a journey of 72 full days that culminated with a dangerous helicopter ride from his boat through freezing temperatures, dense fog, and 50-knot winds. It was
Wow, that's very brave of him. That's very brave of him.
Through freezing temperatures, dense fog, and 50-knot winds. It was literally only by a stroke of luck that he was even offered the trip in the first place, aboard a South African research vessel that agreed to take him there while on their way to fix a nearby weather system. The point of all of this is that Bouvet Island is the world's most hardcore and extreme remote location. It's probably the singular most difficult location on the Earth to visit. And if you're unfortunate enough to get stranded there, escape is almost completely impossible. So probably don't ever go there alone, and if you do, you're probably gonna want to take something with you to keep you occupied for the months or years it'll take until
I mean, you can't use no electronics or nothing, you know. Everybody, it seems like people can't live without their phones, you know. I wouldn't know what to do if I couldn't talk to nobody or anything like that. Yeah, that would be that situation would suck.
You're probably going to want to take something with you to keep you occupied for the months or years it'll take until somebody comes to rescue you. Like, I don't know, a Super Duty editing or gaming PC. Well, that may actually be pretty tough since there isn't any electricity and there isn't any internet, but you know what isn't very hard? Actually building your own PC with Micro Center. A lot of people have asked me how I got started creating my YouTube videos here, and it honestly all began with saving up enough money to build my own beefy editing computer that could handle all of the animations and footage that I wanted to splice.
I think this is an ad now. But he do get a point, you know. I think my brother built his own PC, you know. I don't have build your own PC, but it do come in handy. But yeah, that situation, I never heard of Bouvet Island. This was the first time, but definitely out of all places, I would not want to get stranded there. First of all, it's too far. Second of all, it's cold. Third of all, there's nothing there. Like he said, you have to penguins, seals, some different birds, fishes, and I might mess around and get jumped out there. Like, them seals might be like, wait a minute, you know, I might have to adapt to life in the water or something. I don't know. Like, that's just different. I mean, I wouldn't want to have to eat a seal or a penguin just to survive, but they might get me. See something delicious and, oh, this is different. But that's just me. I wouldn't want to be stranded nowhere, to be honest, especially not without no form of communication or anything. Like, I wouldn't want to be stranded, but y'all let me know what you think. You think you can survive on Bouvet Island? I don't think I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't be able to. Too cold, and they said it might take six days up to a couple of weeks probably just to reach the next land. So, yeah, I probably couldn't make it. I probably couldn't make it. But, guys, that's all I have for this video. Y'all make sure y'all hit that subscribe button. Y'all send down those recommendations. Hey, y'all be blessed, be the best, and be you. I'm out.